you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, Voss and Voss here from theChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the Iron Leaves things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as the rest of the world, because you're one of the smart ones. You're listening to the Chris Voss Show, where we bring you all the amazing authors that come tell their stories that uplift your life, that improve the quality of your life, that teach you the lessons that they've learned in their dark moments of life, and let you know you're not alone. Because the Chris Voss Show is always there with you, and such great people we have on the show. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, another amazing author doing amazing work on the show. His book is coming out June 3rd, 2025. You can pre-order it now. It is called God Only Knows When the Devil Comes for You, A Second Chance at Life. Ryan T. Reichert is on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about his book, his insight, so the PTSD things he does for soldiers in our military and our veterans, et cetera, and some of the consulting work that he does as well. In the meantime, further show your family, friends, and relatives, go to goodreads.com and all those great places on the internet. He is a born-again Christian, an author, a servant leader with over 4 decades of life experience working across small-town America to global global places. Chris Voss flunked to second grade, so that's the callback joke on the show. He's a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, serving 23 years in the U.S. Army, including 4 combat deployments, and he can probably pronounce metropolises. Following his military career, he transitioned to the Fortune 500 world, gaining insight into the corporate leadership and strategy. Welcome to the show. How are you, Ryan?
Hey, good afternoon, Chris. How's it going?
Going good. I'm just learning new words here in the 57.
Yeah, that 46 and change, it is metropolises, but that's okay.
Metropolises. See, I never went and saw that recent Ford Coppola movie. See, I can at least pull jokes from
Metropolis. I love it. Yeah. If you grow up in Hoople, North Dakota, Tatertown, USA, you don't have to worry about metropolises because it's about 350 people strong, or at least it was back in the 80s and 90s. And, I know we got a lot of great people back there still farming the good, godly world that it is up north there. But,
did you say tater tots, or did I just hear tater and now I think I'm tater tots and I'm hungry?
Yeah, no, Tatertown.
Tatertown. Do they make tater tots there? Is that where the
they do not, but back in the day, potatoes were the farming of choice, and so there was a number of families that had Frito-Lay contracts and so on and so forth. And I'm sure somebody will let us know that there's more to it than that, because my dad was, we were kind of the bastard family in town. We had Reichert's insurance, so it's all good. And we were also some of the few Catholics in the Lutheran community there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but no big deal. It wasn't a chip that I held on to for over 4 decades or anything, and finally let go yesterday. So we're good to go.
That's my ability to say metropolises. Note to self: get tater tots after the show. There's a Wayback Burgers that make these great Cajun tater tots, and I cover them in cheese and chili. So now that I've made everyone hungry on the show, let's get into your book, since we're hungry for that knowledge. Tell us the .coms. I think we got your .coms, didn't we?
Yeah, it should have been ourprotectordevelopment.com.
Sorry, I got lost in the hunger strike there. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's in your new book?
Yeah, so new book, God Only Knows When the Devil Comes for You, A Second Chance at Life. Walks you through basically 4.5 decades hanging out with this guy. I thought I was a lot cooler than I was over the years. And it started in Tatertown, USA. And just like I said, yeah, we were the Irish Catholic family. And, my dad and my grandfather had Reichert's insurance. And from there, we ended up, playing football, basketball, baseball, and track. I wish I would have played baseball in high school with the boys. Track kind of got in the way, but they won 3 state championships when I was in high school, and I didn't get to tote around any of those trophies. I played football, and I was injured there. And it's kind of where we get into some of the dynamics of addiction and, the lows in life that we can put ourselves into.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned Reichert's insurance twice now. What does that reference mean?
Yeah, so it was my grandfather, and I'd have to go back to my aunts and uncles here and my dad when it exactly was started. But I know my dad, after Vietnam, came back and went to the University of North Dakota, met my mom, but my grandpa Reich ended up, having a heart condition and so forth. So my dad moved home and started to help him run Reichert's insurance. So small agency there in the mighty metropolis of Hoople. I guess I didn't want to be part of it, and I ended up going to the University of North Dakota when I couldn't get into West Point because of that knee injury I had in high school. Put a couple screws in there and so forth. And back in the 90s, they didn't take waivers to get into West Point. But that was okay. Went to the University of North Dakota after a couple of years, started to run out of money, and they had changed the medical procedures and got me into the U.S. Army through the ROTC program. And, So
what made you want to join the Army?
I think I always did. Both grandfathers were in the Navy during World War II. My dad was in Vietnam. He had a cousin that was in the Army National Guard. And then we had a great family friend, Colonel Erling Rolfson, retired, one each, Marine, just tough as nails. This guy was a super trooper, still is. I mean, he does, I think, sprint triathlons or whatever they call him at 80 odd years old now. I mean, he's just a stud. And I saw him and I was like, yeah, I think that's what I want to do when I grow up, and I haven't grown up yet, nor became a man, but it's okay that, people can judge us for that. No big deal.
Cool. Yeah. Let them judge.
So I joined the Army, and the next thing I was heading to school for boys at Fort Benning, Georgia, and did all the cool stuff: airborne school, ranger school, infantry officer's basic course, and
so did you become a ranger then?
Ranger qualified, I guess that's the whole aspect of it. A true ranger, in my definition of it, would be, 75th Ranger Regiment, which I wasn't. I was not a tier 1 guy. I was a tier 2 guy. So excuse me, look at me all tongue tied.
Can you spell metropolis?
25th Infantry Division. Can I buy a vowel, Alex?
Can I buy a vowel, please?
So ended up being tier 2, so that he would have been the 25th ID or the 2nd Infantry Division, so forth. But super cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
One of my scoutmasters, or 2 of them, were Rangers, and they would tell us the Army Ranger stories and jumping out of helicopters and doing the crazy shit you guys do, especially in training. Yeah. It was like I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm staying in the helicopter.
Yeah, but I mean, in my book, I really get into that fear factor aspect of things. I mean, because I'm afraid of all kinds of stuff. Like when I was younger, I was afraid of the dark, and that took, I was probably in my 30s before I was actually truly not afraid of the dark. Yeah, it sounds crazy.
And you're an Army Ranger. You're like kicking people's asses, carrying whatever gun you guys carry, babe, and you're badasses to everybody on the planet. You're afraid of the dark.
Yeah, no, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street did that to me. I don't remember.
Did it really?
Freddy Krueger. I was like 5 years old, and mom and dad were on a date, and I was up with the babysitter. We won't name names or throw anybody under the bus right now, but yeah, I slept in my parents' bedroom for years. I'm sure they loved that, and it was.
I'm still sleeping in my mom's bedroom.
But there was that I hung around for a long time, being afraid of. I was afraid of, going bankrupt, and my dad did struggle. He's a recovering alcoholic of 40 years. And I know his obsession of the mind led through a lot of years of, trying to make yourself happy through buying things. And, I kind of went through that a little bit as well through my addictions in life and so forth. And all of it, I feared divorce, so we're checking off the box here, got divorced last year.
To be fearful of, I suppose. Yeah. Divorce is definitely up there on the list.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
It's painful. It's expensive. It's really sad. do, when I reflect on that one, it's something that, it still hurts. I got a broken heart. It's one of those aspects where, everybody thinks us as men, we're so tough and manly and all these things. And we have feelings too. And,
what? Feelings? What are you talking about?
I know, it's crazy. I get into that. I get into that in the first book. And then the second book, we really dive into our feelings and, try to work through those so you can, not give a shit what other people think, because I think that's the big thing I always struggled with is I cared probably more about what you thought of me than you thought of me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just
a lot of people get over that about their 40s. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, I think, when I got hurt again about halfway through my military career. And it was one of those aspects where you start to doubt, like you can't run a 5 mile in 40 minutes anymore, kind of thing. You're a little bit slower. Maybe your purpose starts to wane a little bit. And when I transitioned out of the Army, that's where I just didn't have a purpose besides making money and making sure that the family had a big house, nice cars, a boat, trips, all that, all that material idolatry kind of stuff. And, that's where I think I finally, broke. And, really broke, went off the rails, went full, I know the word people won't like it, but, I went full retard, I was drinking, a bottle of bourbon whenever I could, get my hands on one and washing my prescription drugs down with it. And just, not living a healthy, purposeful life in Fortune 500 America. Cause it just, unfortunately, it sounds terrible, but it just wasn't challenging. I had no purpose behind it,
Huh. Let's break down a few things because you made a reference early on, and I think in your high school days about addiction. Sounds like your father had some addictive properties. Did you suffer from addiction and drinking and issues when you were in high school, or did it start later?
Yeah, in high school, actually. Yeah. So with that knee injury my freshman year, so this would have been like the fall.
So you're medicating that.
Yeah. So fall of '93, like third game of the season, ended up blowing my left ACL completely out. And, this is back when, it wasn't like, hey, 6 weeks later, we could get you up and going. Certainly, I didn't miss my sophomore year of football, come back my junior year, and so on and so forth. And I think that woulda, shoulda, coulda, the victimization, the poor me, all these things, that pride and ego that, we have inside of us.
Probably some pain too, physically.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always started with like the physical pain, and then the emotional pain, comes thereafter. So, you cover up, that physical pain with whatever. I mean, it was morphine in the beginning. When I blew my Achilles out in the Army, Oxy was kind of a big thing back then, and he still is. Obviously, I think we've seen some movies and some people writing about that kind of stuff where you just, it gives you
heroin, really.
Yeah, it really is
legalized heroin, basically, or manufactured legalized heroin. Yeah, and so. It sounds like your father had a problem with drinking. Did that contribute to any of your issues growing up as a kid?
So he recovered when I was 6, or he sobered up when I was 6, and he went out to Hartview in Bismarck, North Dakota. Spent I think an extra stay and a half out there. So he'd tell the story if you ever get to hear it. And I think from that side of it, though, the perfectionisms and, the grown up Irish Catholic, all the rules. I mean, we, dress right dress all the way. And, he would have had his time. And like I said, he was in Vietnam and so forth. And, I don't know exactly what life would have been like for him growing up, but I'm sure, looking the part and acting the part was probably pretty, And that's how I felt. You always had to have straight A's, and, you couldn't be on the wrong side of the tracks, and so on and so forth. And, I struggled. I remember my freshman year of college, I got arrested after I played rugby in college. At All Minnesota tournament, I got arrested for drinking and driving, underage and everything else. I mean, there was always this, I don't know what the term we want to use, but that drugs or alcohol. Yeah, that came into play and did cause, some reform in my life. So.
Yeah. I mean, and guys in the military, they drink pretty hard. My brother came back from being a Marine, and I thought he was, kidding around when he goes, yeah, you got a bottle of vodka or anything? You got any alcohol in here? And he just come back from, I think 3 or 4, whatever his basic tour was that you do for signing up with the Marines. He just did the basic package, I guess. I don't know what it's called. But I think it was at least 2 or 3 years or so, but he came back from the Marines and he says, hey, you got a bottle of vodka, and we had one in the fridge. And back then, we mixed it with, it was like 90% orange juice and 10% vodka.
Right.
We were 20 and in our 20s. And so he took the bottle of vodka, and I thought this was some marine machismo shit at first. And he took it and he just swigs it and he throws it back. He's 20 some odd years old, throws it back and guzzles like half the fucking bottle. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, this is some machismo bullshit. This is some macho marine thing. And I'm like, I'm going to watch him choke. I'm going to watch his face turn red. And I sit there staring at the face, looking for some sort of flinch. Nothing. He could put down a 24 case of beer. He'd be catatonic, but he'd still be alive somehow. He tells us about the drinking that would go on in the military and the bars. And, that's when I learned that they put steel pool cues in bars because, there's so many fights that break every week.
Break them, yeah. You're not wrong by any means. Yeah, it is. It's this aspect where, whatever it is, the physical pain, the emotional pain, the, pardon the expression, the dick measuring, it's just one of those aspects that, I always label it to the 7 deadly sins, however we want to go down that one, and that pride, that ego side of things, it's like if you're a little dude, you got little man syndrome. If you're a big man, you got little dick syndrome, whatever it is, it's one of those things where we end up, just playing that game. And just like your brother, I think, a lot of the time, like it was macho, if you could throw down a 30 rack, a Cuba, Coors Light or whatever, hey, that's good on you. But I think a lot of it, though, too, is just it's always that fear. When's the next time we got to leave? Like I just think about how much I was gone, and when we used to I used to tote it around as a perspective of, my marriage of 24 years or whatever, 2/3 of it I was gone, and it's what was that like for, my ex-wife and for me or whatever? Every time I was like, hey, we're leaving again. How long's this time? 12 months, 3 months, 6, whatever it was. It's this aspect of what does normal look like? And, so for me, I probably was afraid. And so, you just pour something on top of it or whatever. And, unfortunately that in the end, I lost a 25-year relationship. My 2 girls have, the oldest is coming back in my life. The youngest, I think, still is probably pissed that she thinks, I abandoned them and they weren't good enough and, all these things. And then my Fortune 500 job last year, with the economy and things, it did some downsizing, which was beautiful, though, because I wouldn't be here today talking to you if that didn't happen. Yeah. And, I look at it all now as true. Like I'm born again, through my faith practices of all the valleys now where let's talk about that. Cause I wanted to get to that point. We've talked about kind of some of the journey you're going through in the military and the hard times. At what point do you reach this point where you find God? I don't know if you'd always been with God or if you had the moment where maybe with your addiction or what was it that made you finally decide that that's in your life, I guess? Yeah, I think it goes all the way back to, like I said, growing up Catholic. It was a great foundation, dark and dreary, a punishing God, not a loving God.
Those nuns with the rulers.
Dude, tell you. So that's where it starts. So we have a good foundation in things. Mary Lutheran, so we shift around a little bit, like Catholic light. And, not really deep into it. We practiced when we wanted to, when it was convenient to us, but, it wasn't putting, a higher power, the good Lord Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit first. And there's a wild stat out there. It's if you put God first, and you put that between you and your spouse, you have a 1% divorce rate. Obviously we know the divorce rate, what it is without any of that. Yeah. But anywho, somebody did the math. I obviously didn't get that in time. Here we are. And it's one of those where, I basically, when I was all fed up, I'd been to, Vegas the year before, hitting the Spearmint Rhino strip club with the
What?
boys.
I've never heard of the Spearmint Rhino before. I don't think I've ever been in that place at least under 100 times.
We had a good time out there. And then,
I bet you did.
you're talking to a stripper, every other month on the phone. And
now you're still married at this point. Is that correct?
I'm still married at this point.
You're scoring points to the ladies right now.
I know. And that's the whole aspect.
This is your journey.
What's Dr. Jordan Peterson say? The truth is going to give you the best outcome, the absolute whatever is supposed to happen. And I fear yet again probably why I couldn't come clean with that, like when I was married, and hit it. And now today, I'm sorry, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And that's just the fact. And what happened was Thanksgiving of 2023, I lustfulness is adultery biblically. The act of adultery is another thing. And that finally happened. And I sobered up the day after. And the good Lord, in my mind, the way I reflect on it, it says, I'll take this away from you because, you committed a mortal sin. And all you have to do now is repent and, give all glory to me, and we'll go about our business. And then the next thing you know, you fast forward a year, the divorce is final, and we're writing books and getting on podcasts and trying to help our brothers and sisters in arms who are suffering from PTSD and addiction on a day-to-day basis.
Sharing the story. That's how we help each other through life. It's the owner's manual's life, everyone's story. It's the fabric of our lives, as I like to say. And, it's amazing how many people we end up helping. You'll end up helping. You'll have people that you won't even know you've helped through this book, but sometimes you'll meet them and they'll tell you their stories about how your book changed their life, and they need to hear it from you. You're the only person who's gonna resonate with them through their experience and your experience in your life, and so that's great. You entitled the book, excuse me. You entitled the book, God Only Knows When the Devil Comes for You. What does that mean? What's the reference to that?
Yeah, this has gone through multiple different times. Probably when I was, going through the divorce, I was like, hey, the devil's my soon-to-be ex-wife. When I lost my job, when I got laid off, I, probably looked to, the whoever was running the books at said Fortune 500. It's like they're the devil coming for me, But today, when I reflect on it, the devil's like your own self inside of you, and it's your sinfulness that you allow whenever you're weak. I call it the war on purpose.
The war on purpose.
And so if I don't know what time did you get up today, Chris?
About 2 hours ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like in a generic fashion, let's just say run of the mill. Okay. You work at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. You set your alarm for 6:30, and all of a sudden, like 4:30 in the morning, the good Lord wakes you up, and you're like, what in the heck? I got 2 more hours of sleep. And no, you're awoken because, you have a purpose to get after. If you let me into your life, be it, obviously through food addiction or drinking or what. I gained about 50 pounds after I retired from the Army.
Wow.
And, it's one of those things that it was just, what's the if you see food, you eat it diet, or however that worked, or whatever, like
the seafood diet.
That's right. And, I wanted to get in shape, because, round was the shape I was going for. And it was one of those that,
that doesn't work too well in the military. They're not fans of being round.
No, you got height and weight, every month, you stand up and you're, I'm 6 foot. So I could weigh a bit, I could be 220 and it not be that big of a deal. But, to be truly military fit, I think 178, was like height, weight and everything, but the body percentage fattage. Anyways, I'm getting off a little bit on this one, but where you end up and, 4 a.m. courage is what I call it. And it's basically whenever you wake up, like you go wage war on your purpose in life. So like today, what that looks like is, I got a 3-year-old golden doodle, we feed her, go for a walk, get the coffee started, grab my Bible, read a few verses wherever I'm at in it. And then, there's another book that I'm, reading to, take on some knowledge. And then I work out, so in my book, I call it, getting in your 3 wins. And so basically, you got a spiritual win. So whatever that looks like, I guess I skipped it. Before I get out of bed, you have to be grateful for just being alive, being woken up and having, air in your lungs and, getting ready to, speak into existence that gratefulness that you have for just another day. And, a lot of people, I got it. I was not grateful 17 months ago, before I sobered up and before I was, finishing things off. But today, now I'm like, it's amazing what a day looks like. Talking to you, on your show, before, I was taking some classes, learning, how to be a better public speaker, a more motivational speaker, so on and so forth. And then just, finishing up working on book number 3. But yeah, so basically you got your spiritual win, you got your personal win, and then I'm going to brain fart, on the radio here right now and think what the third win I'm looking for is. Let's see, personal, the educational side of things or whatever. Mm-hmm. So anyways, but so you get all those 3 in every day. You don't have to worry about anything else, and it's just that aspect of it. And it's as simple as, reading, writing, being creative, being, praying for somebody you don't adore, so that's been my new one, is this whole aspect of you pray for 3 people you don't like, and my list is getting smaller and smaller. If I got a buddy out there, a good friend, and he teases me all the time. He says, I don't like you, Ryan, at all, and we get together 3 times a week, so I just pray for you 3 times a day kind of thing. And I'm like, that's not very nice, but I can understand that. Sometimes I'm not a very nice guy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a joke I had earlier that I don't remember what it was, but it passed through. But yeah, you were talking about big guys have little things and little guys have big things, as you were talking about stereotypes and stuff that people have. Most people call me a big dick, but it's not because of anything to do with my organs. It's mostly just I'm a big fucking dick. So there's that. I get called that a lot. It's a late joke, boys. It took a while to cook that one. Anyway, it was actually cooked on the spot, but took a while to get around to it. So I figured I'd drag that in there. Drag callback jokes in the show, Chris. Go ahead. Do it. Delayed timing, which is another dick joke. Anyway, now you've mentioned 2 or 3 other books. This is your first book, and then is there some more in the can or coming out soon?
Yeah, so it's basically under the umbrella of Our Protector Development, just like the consultancy side of things. And, being from North Dakota, we're the whole state slogans like be legendary. So I'm going with Our Protector Legendary Leadership Consultancy. So Our Protector LLC is what it is. But basically underneath that umbrella, you have the first book, God Only Knows When the Devil Comes for You, A Second Chance at Life. The second book, which I believe will come out probably, August, September timeframe from what the publishers are saying, is The Icarus Effect. And that will get into, the highs and lows of our emotions, and kind of what we talked about, I think, before we came on the air is, or just in the beginning, maybe if all of us have feelings. And for me, it was more so men have feelings too. And it'll take you through, the highs and lows of my life, and where, hey, you make varsity football that freshman year, you're on top of the world, like you're dating the head cheerleader and you're going to homecoming with her. And then 3 games into the season, right before homecoming, you blow your knee out and you're in the valley, and she's not going to homecoming with you. And, then you start your alcohol and drug addiction, but that goes through the next 30 odd years and kind of takes you through some ways. Harvard's got a great study out there on, emotional intelligence versus, obviously our mind of being, the smartest Einstein person on the planet. And emotions are more important than, how smart you are, kind of thing. So it gets into some of that kind of stuff. And then the third book, we're still playing with the title. So I'm going to probably send out some requests, surveys for people to, be like, I like that one. I want this one. Or, hey, I can come up with one better than, you guys can, Ryan, kind of thing. And, but basically, like I said, same thing under Our Protector Development, but looking at, kind of the 24 hours to live, 6 steps to survive today, or something to that effect. But it's got 6 very important steps in it that will help all of us out. But it's a 90-day prayer meditation journal to take you to get a habit in life. And then with that habit, after 90 days, you can basically go about your business and try to live a happier life, or at least a life full of joy and peace, which I had neither 18 months ago.
Wow. Yeah. And so let's talk about your consulting company that you do. What are you doing now over there? Tell us, give us the .com just for updates.
Yeah. Ourprotectordevelopment.com. And, but yeah, right now in the early stages, so it's a lot of one-on-one and a lot of pro bono, but basically, getting those of us who have struggled, whatever it may be in life, getting you back on the beam. And, the goal is to, bring some of my risk management side of things that I did, help with in the Fortune 500 America realm to corporate America, but basically developing all those tools, our good tax dollars went into this guy for almost a quarter of a century, and that great strategy that you can use to be a better leader, actually be an amazing legendary leader, is kind of what we're going for. Because I don't know if we do such a great job seeing that from certain leaders, and probably 50-50. For every great leader I had in the military, I had one that I certainly would kick out of bed for eating crackers, kind of thing, so it's one where, and I hate to say this, but in Fortune 500 America, I would say 25% of the leadership that I had was worthy of keeping in bed, kind of thing. It just was one that you just didn't have great leadership. And I think it's just a lack of, it could be two things. I think fear comes back into play once again here, of losing your job, or, I don't know, not knowing what you're doing. None of us have this figured out,
Yeah. That's why we share each other's stories with each other. Cause
right.
I didn't get an owner's manual in the mail. Evidently you didn't get yours either. I'm still trying to find the guy who got it. But that's why we do the show. We just ask everybody who appears on the show. We go, hey, did you get the manual on life? And did it come in the mail when you're a baby? It had all those answers in it. And they're like, no. And I'm like, geez, neither did I. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. I call it failing forward. That's what we do.
Failing forward. Hope springs anew. That's the beautiful part about the human condition, is hope. If it wasn't for hope, I think we'd all be lost. So there's always that. Let's get a plug in here. You had a project that you support. That's an organization that helps PTSD and veterans.
Yeah, Bravo Zulu House. Director Tim Murray has taken on this challenge, and it's going to be amazing because let me look real quick in my calendar. But the ribbon cutting ceremony is on 28 May. So this is Bravo Zulu House. It's in Winnebago, Minnesota. It's about 2 hours south of Minneapolis, but it'll be the first all-veteran sober house in the nation.
Wow.
It'll have 13 beds. And,
how come there's not more of these? What the fuck?
Yeah. I do not know. I know that a big push, though, is for us to continue to get them in other states, and then also to have the first all women or all women's house as well here in Minnesota. But it's basically those of us who suffer from PTSD, and I think what I say 98% of us are addicts as well. And it's so sad to see how destructive having one post-traumatic stress disorder, and then, addiction on the other hand. And, we meld those together, just the lives that can be destroyed. You think of, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, cousins, all the different things out there that, that we suffer from until we get the necessary help. And, for me, I was fortunate enough. I came, I didn't go through treatment, came off the street and found an amazing home group here in Maple Grove, Minnesota. And that's one of those things where, I was challenged, for whatever reason, the good Lord, put me in that room. And, those who were there challenged me, said, hey, we challenge you to come back, next week. And I actually had a good friend. He's actually my little brother today, brother from another mother, kind of a stepbrother per se. And, he's a friend of Bill W's as well, but it's one of those aspects where he got me into the, rooms and, did 90 meetings in 90 days. And that's where I really solidified, what my program looks like and, how I want to live my life one day at a time moving forward. And it's, basically it's that servant leadership that I would have had in the military, just wanted to volunteer and be part of the green machine. Now it's part of civilization and truly, giving back to everybody else who's, given in some way, shape, or form. And, I just can't imagine now going back to the selfish prick I used to be. And so, it's just learning one day at a time now.
There you go. Better. That's all we do in life, man. I mean, I thought I had the answers when I was young. I think maybe we all do. But certainly at 57, I learned new things. I learned metropolis says today. I got to work on how to say that. So I'm still learning new stuff. There's more new stuff to learn. And then they just came out with this thing called AI. And blowing up into your life now. So it's great you're doing these things. I love this project that you mentioned, the Zulu. Let's give a .org out to it. Bravo ZuluHouse.org, and you can check it out. Looks like they're helping veteran suicide, folks, is really bad. I think it's 70 or 40 people a day. It's anything above 0 is too many. Our veterans are some of the most precious people in the world. They stood up for our democracy when we had one. It's 2025 people. Anyway, they put their lives on the line, their bodies on the line, their families on the line. And, the other thing is, we've had this conversation a lot on the show, and I have with my military buddies I game with. Our veterans are taught some of the best leadership skills in the world. That's why we have such a great military, is because of the leadership skills that are taught to everybody. And, these folks, they ran around with billions or trillions of dollars worth of equipment that they had to care for, take care of, and utilize and stuff. I'm sure that, you can trust them with the stapler at your office.
Yeah. I would hope to think,
write that joke down.
That's actually a great one. You think of just, private Joe Snuffy, Private Reichert kind of thing. And the amount of equipment that he signs for compared to what, it's just,
you can trust him with the copier. It's going to be fine.
I laugh at that.
No, it just kills me, because these are leadership quality people, and people that, God, if you want to have them in your organization, they know how to get shit done. They know how to be accountable. Get the fuck around in the military and find out, they got shit to do and rules. And to me, if I had a choice between a veteran who served in the military to somebody who was just a Joe on the street, I'd pick the veteran from everything I know about him. Just the leadership qualities alone. I'm working on my second book for leadership, and I'm looking at the Army's Be No Do that they have in their training, and then each branch has their own. I think we've had one of the West Point guys on the show for his book who teaches leadership at West Point. And if you're out there looking to hire people, look for veterans, man, because they're not going to break the copier. They've had $1 billion of stuff.
Well, they're at least when they show up or whatever, kind of thing. They're 110%. They're 110%.
They're the dudes, man.
It's like somebody's 1,000%.
So give us a final pitch out as we go out for people to order up your book, reach out to you for consulting services, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much. Yeah. So ourprotectordevelopment.com is where you can come check everything out. It's got everything there for you. But it's also, God only knows when the devil comes for you, a second chance at life. It's on Amazon right now for pre-order. 3 June. You'll be able to at least get it's on its way in 2 days, you can get it. And basically after that, like I said, just keep looking out for our Protector Development wherever you go. And looking forward to being of service wherever I can be.
Support our veterans wherever you can. Thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Ryan.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, or the book wherever good books are sold. It is called God Only Knows When the Devil Comes for You, A Second Chance of Life, coming out June 3rd, 2025. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And I should have a